Hello, and welcome to the Business Advocate Podcast. I am your host, Russell Carrier with First Choice Business Brokers of East Tennessee and Nashville. And today we are going to be talking about KPIs and automation. And my guest today is Dennis Jackson with Works Solutions. Welcome to the show, Dennis.
Hey, Russell, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I am anxious to get started on this. In today's world, with all the talk about automation, AI, and all these new technologies that are coming out, I know people have questions, me being one of them. So, one thing just for people that don't know, that are just in the beginning, just learning about this, what does KPI mean?
Yeah, so KPI stands for Key Performance Indicator. And if you think about it, it's goals, but it's more specific to what it is you actually need to do to get those results you're looking for.
Okay, very good. Simplify it even more.
Yeah,
Give
so
examples of
yeah,
KPIs.
yeah. So think of it if let's think of it if you're driving your car, your dashboard is your KPIs. You're looking at what's your speed, oil pressure, and gas. Are you full or are you empty? Those are kind of three key indicators because if you're going higher than 70 miles an hour, you know you might get a ticket. Or if it's hot, you know you may have engine problems. Or if your fuel is at half and you've got 400 miles to go, you know you're going to have to stop somewhere along the road to get fuel along the way. It gives you those indicators of what's happening. And the challenge that many small businesses have, they're relying on many things to happen out of QuickBooks or their accounting side of the equation, which is really an after the fact. You've ran out of gas or your car has overheated already. Think about KPIs are trying to shift those earlier on. So if it's sales, you're trying to increase sales by making up 20%, then you know you've got to meet X number of people per day. You've got to do X number of demos of your product. You've got to send out X number of proposals, those kinds of things that you're measuring, because that's going to tell you, are you going to hit those goals or your targets that you're trying to get to? And it's easy to do, but unfortunately, research shows about 70% of companies don't really have KPIs. They rely on the accounting world, and it's always after the fact, and then they wonder why things don't work.
Yeah, definitely accounting is a historical view to your business. And so you're saying KPIs are more real time, real time actions
Yeah. I mean,
that you can look at and read and see what's happening.
exactly. Put it in a personal perspective. If you're trying to lose weight, the scale is your accounting system, because when you step on it, it's going to tell you you're 250 pounds or whatever. But the KPIs would be, I'm going to walk 4 miles a day. I'm going to do 50 push-ups, and I'm going to eat, 1,500 calories. And you're tracking those. That's your KPIs, because you know that if you have done those things, when you step on the scale the next week, you'll be at 249 instead of 250, and you don't have to wait for the scale to tell you. And it helps guide you where you're going. And you make these KPIs very specific to what you're trying to get to. Now, the thing to avoid is, think of that car dashboard. There's three or four things going on. There's lots of other things happening in that engine, and there's other bells and whistles on there, but there's three big ones. It's the fuel, is it hot or cold, and what's your speed, and how far you're driving. On your dashboard that you're going to create for these KPIs, don't have 55 different things, because your mind can only probably focus on 3 to 10. I always encourage 3 to 5 is kind of the sweet spot. Get those wins, and then once you get past that, then you can begin to fine tune it. And one group may have the sales group may have 3 or 4 KPIs about sales. Operations could have something else, and the back office has some other KPIs that they're focused on. And you're looking at all those things. They're monitoring those. They have, and we'll talk about automation here in a minute. They have
Mhm.
ways to see how they're getting there real time and know that what's going on so that when you do your financials at the end of the month, you know exactly what's going to happen before the accountant even comes in and tells you that sales were up and you made lots more money because you knew the KPIs were heading in the right direction.
Okay. So you brought up 3 areas that a business could create some KPIs.
Yep.
You said sales, operations, and back office. Give 3 examples in each.
Mhm. So on sales, it's definitely how many new people they're meeting, how many might be how many demos they're doing, and how many proposals they send out.
Okay. I am
Operations,
writing.
yep, perfect.
Yep.
Operations might be um, how much waste they have. And these are it depends on your industry on operations. This one's a little broader here, but um, what's the machine uptime? How many people are late to work, or what's your attendance record? There's all kinds of things in that operation side that you can get very, very detailed on and get more focused into what's going on and measuring those things. You can even get KPI specific to machines. If you're in manufacturing, you can have a couple KPIs per machine of what's happening and how their throughput and productivity and all that kind of stuff. Waste is going to be a big one. Um, Back office might be if it's customer service type things, that how are our response times to responding to a customer's concern or issue? Are um, invoices based on invoices coming in that we enter within 38 minutes from receiving the invoice, or there's all kinds of different things. Again, think about those tasks that play into the result that you're trying to get to, and that's what you're trying to measure to try to improve those flows as you go through that.
Okay. So as a business owner, when we start breaking down our businesses, we start thinking about these measurable activities within the business and the different business units of the business. And anything that's measurable, you can literally create a KPI on.
Exactly, and you don't want to measure everything because if something's working really well, it's like why are you measuring it? But if there's areas that you're trying to grow or improve or reduce cost or whatever, think back to, and again, I always put it into if I'm trying to lose weight, it's what are the activities that attribute to that weight loss? So if I'm trying to reduce costs, what are the things that attribute to that they can measure and keep track of to help you figure out how you're doing to reduce those cost levels in those different areas that you're focused on. And it's either consumption, price, or waste is kind of the 3 biggies. Um, and that you're doing that ahead of time and that you're not waiting for after the fact. Because if you
Excellent.
think because you think about it from a business standpoint, and I was guilty of it as well, you'd sit there and wait for the financials to come. By the time they got there, it was usually the 15th of the next month. So now you're 45 days behind. By the time you act on it, it's 60 to 90 days after something already happened, and the little fire turn is now a forest fire that you could have easily put out or fixed earlier on if you had that set up.
Exactly. So it's too late.
It's too late usually.
Yeah.
That's where KPIs come in to help you, and adjust them. Again, they're goals. And you know, we all do goals, annually for performance, but these are looked at daily, weekly, monthly, and adjusted. It makes doing your HR goals much easier because you've already got them here, and now you can kind of pull it together, and people know what their performance is. Um, as people, sales is the easiest one because they've got lots of stuff they're measuring anyhow, and it's right there. The other groups have it; they just sometimes don't think about how they can measure and hold themselves accountable. The other big shift that it does, instead of you as the owner or manager having to tell people if they're doing a good job or not, they can see it right there because they can see their KPIs. They know that, hey, these are key things that I'm expected to do. and let them set the KPIs. Don't be the manager that tells them the KPIs. Let them help you come up with what they think they need to be doing. You may have to guide them, but let them own it. And it's amazing if they own those KPIs, the results, because nobody ever wants to be an underachiever. Everybody wants to do better than their target. So they will exceed your expectations most of the time if they have those things in front of them.
Dennis, that's awesome. And everybody remember key performance indicators. And as Dennis mentioned earlier, 3 to 5.
Keep
Don't
it
overwhelm yourself.
exactly. Keep it simple. I mean, think about where are the issues that you're having, that focus on those. You might have one around things that are going well because you do want to make sure it doesn't go off the cliff unexpectedly. But don't make it where the people are spending hours. It's not extra work. This should be complementary to what they're already doing. And it saves time in the end because now they see what's really happening up front.
Great advice. And I speak from historical. I used to work for a large software company and they created KPIs. And it would take hours of time to fill out the reports that they wanted to address all these KPIs that they put in place. And my thought process, I was in sales. So I'm spending 3 hours to 5 hours a week doing busy work, filling out these KPI requests instead of out meeting clients and actually achieving the goals of the KPIs.
Right.
So I think you nailed it. KPIs are great, but they can't take away what you're actually trying to achieve is productivity
Correct. And
and efficiency.
this is where the automation comes in. So I'll use sales as the easy one because hopefully they're using some kind of CRM. And ideally, then you're tying that CRM to those KPIs. So if it's how many new people they meet, well, your status is one of them is initial. How many new people do you meet? Well, one of them is you have a status that says, here's how many people I met this week. And they put, when they meet, when I met Russell a month ago, the first time I met him, it was initial meeting and it automatically just put it in there and it counted it. And I knew that week how many initial people I met. So I didn't have to do any extra work. It was just part of my conversation after I had the meeting with Russell. I was noting in my CRM and 5 minutes later, I'm moving on and it's just part of my normal day. And then it could be, how many demos? Well, again, a status of demos and it just counts that. So the salesperson's not having to do any extra work. They're probably already documenting this thing. If you don't have a CRM, you probably do need to get a CRM. I mean, and as a small business, Salesforce is probably going to overwhelm you. There's lots of other ways to get CRMs that are more cost effective and much simpler to work with. And Russell and I can guide you to any of those types of groups to help you kind of look at those ways to do that if you don't have that. But you can tie that to there. Operationally, the same thing begins to happen. You probably have some kind of production system that's tracking waste or how many outputs or inputs or inventory or whatever that's happening, that you can hopefully then extract that data from there to create those KPIs. So people aren't having to sit down at a desk and crunch this stuff out. If they are, there's ways to solve that cost effectively to help you be more, you don't have to get a whole brand new system. You can keep your current system and there's ways to augment that to make it so much more efficient for you and not break the bank.
So Dennis, we jumped right into CRM.
Yeah.
And this can be done on paper. It can. So all you people out there saying, I'm not going to spend money on a CRM. I'm too small. It costs too much. Well, I'm going to disagree with that up front. But so you can do this on paper. You can track it with Excel and all these other office solutions that you have probably already. And yes, there are free things out there that you can use. In today's world, there are a ton of CRMs at every price point for any type of business. Just do a little bit of legwork, search it out. They're out there. I promise you. Somebody's thought about it for your industry, your line of work. And as Dennis mentioned, you can almost be assured that within the CRM, they have some kind of mechanism where you can put this in place. And I want to take this a step further with all that said and all my rambling. So you move to a CRM, you start looking for, well, first you have to determine what your KPIs are going to be,
Right.
right? You start putting those in place. And we talked about automation, and there is automation just by entering these in to a CRM that starts to take place. But there's all kinds of other automation that you can start to trigger based on what the data actually starts showing. So, Dennis, start talking a little bit more, and this is more advanced than the basic stuff that CRMs do, but let's talk about like the next step of automation and what that can do for a business.
Yeah. So, again, I'm with Russell. That CRM, I've been in business 13 years. I didn't have one when I first started. Now I couldn't live without it. I mean, I start my day and end my day there because it helps me just stay focused on what I need to do. It's amazing how many salespeople do not follow up, and CRMs help you stay on task of when's the last time I talked to somebody. Um, and it just helps you be much more successful. The other thing that so we work with lots of companies on the automation part. And so again, I'll use the example of the Home Depot. So let's say Home Depot out there, we sell them. Let's say this, my company sells to Home Depot, we'll say. Well, in the system, in the CRM, it might be the Home Depot of Brentwood. In the operations system, it might be Brentwood Home Depot. And in accounting, it might be the Home Depot in Brentwood on Mallory Lane. All the same locations, but we now have three. And then operations accidentally puts in a different spelling or a different address. And all of a sudden we end up with 5 locations, but it's really one location. That can mess your whole process up because you may be you might be paying commissions based on locations. And so now all of a sudden sales guys getting 5 commissions that you should only been doing 1. There's all kinds of things. And so that's where this automation piece begins to play in, because you try to figure out who puts the information in first and then push or pull it to the other systems along the way so other people do not have to keystroke. On average, and this was before inflation really hit, think about, one person used to equate to about, let's say on average, you pay someone $45,000 to work. That's probably cheap compared to today's standards. But that cost of that person really is closer to 65,000 by the time you figure benefits, space, your time, all this stuff that goes in. That if they're really just keystroking data, that we could have automated that. And I'm not an advocate of cutting people, but in today's world, we actually are having a hard time finding labor. So it's a great way to augment and fill in and grow your business without adding headcount. And to me, that's the big win, that if you can automate and grow your business and your cost stays the same, that's just pure profit at the bottom line basically for you, because now you've got all that gap. So, there's all kinds of, and I always tell people, stop and think about, where does the data start the very first spot? Some companies have it flow charted out really well. Most do not. They will have it sort of done, but they forget there's steps along the way that certain people do different things. Or there's things that have to go to the FedEx machine or UPS, or there's all kinds of stuff. And so there's all these different places that it's a task that has to happen, but it doesn't really add any value. And it also is an opportunity for error. And then that's when costs begin to come in, because now I ship something to the wrong location, or there's all kinds of different things that begin to happen. Now, you don't need to automate the whole process in one. It's an elephant, so don't eat it all at once. You're going to find those spots where you have your biggest challenges or gaps and try to figure out how to bridge that gap. And it doesn't mean getting rid of the current systems you have. If you already have QuickBooks, you can keep QuickBooks. There's things you can do upstream with all kinds of other different softwares to fill gaps. And with tools like Zapier or Workato or APIs, you can connect that information. There's times where you find that, hey, it only happens once a month. Well, guess what? You just do it as an export, as a CSV file, and Susie hits it and then brings it over here and brings it back in because it only takes 30 seconds. And it's like, okay, we're not going to link that one, but we've automated the part that it gives you the format exactly the way we need it. Susie hits the button and puts it in the other machine. And so you don't have to spend the money for an API, but you still semi-automated the process along the way. And so there's just lots of things you can do to help make things more efficient. My partner and I, we looked at one for a company the other day. They do painting and for, like painting houses. They had, what they have, 8 different systems. They keystroke the same things in 8 different systems, and they had all kinds of errors, and they were frustrated. And so it's like, okay, let's not solve all 8. Let's find one. Let's get it fixed and get a win there. And when you're happy there and you see the savings, then you can move on to the next step and the next step. And over a period of 6 months or a year, you've automated your system. You don't have to go buy a whole brand new ERP system. They keep the same tools. You also start finding that there's some of the tools you don't need because you're doing the same thing anyhow, and you can let that other software go because it's already happening here, and I can just skip that step because we don't really need it. We just did it because that's how it happened 5 years ago, and we just keep doing it even though it doesn't add any value. So I encourage companies to bring in an outside group periodically just to look at your workflow and just think through, what are you doing, and is there better ways to do it? And if you see opportunities to do it, there's times where it just doesn't make sense, and it's like, okay, that's fine. We like it the way it is. That's fine. But it's nice just to have that snapshot. That's kind of a KPI, because now you've got a KPI of, hey, how many steps are in our process? I used to work at Frito-Lay, and back I was on a project team where we looked at how many steps it took to get a potato from the ground to a chip in the bag that you consumed. It was 83 steps from the time that potato came out to the end. When we got done, we got it down to 21 steps. And so removing steps meant savings to the bottom line, because it was either things that didn't need to happen or people that didn't need to be involved. And it just flew, and we were able to make twice as many chips with the same number of factories because we reduced all those steps. And so that's just, one of the ways to kind of think through it, and it's, don't be intimidated by AI, because if you're a small business, you're not going to put in all the fancy AI type stuff. But there's AI really is just simple automation, and you can do it. Don't get bogged down by what tech worlds call, all the stuff, and get intimidated by that, and don't spend tons of money on it. There's ways to do this cost effectively in today's world.
Thank you, Dennis. You actually said a lot of things in those few minutes, and I'm going to kind of summarize a little bit. One, once you figure out your KPIs, it's all about data in, data out. You put crap in, you're going to get crap out. Number 2, you will realize efficiency and cost savings by implementing KPIs and some automation, just even the basic automation. Where if for those people that say, I have to do it on paper, I can't afford CRMs, just the time savings that you're doing on paper to track this, if you put that toward a CRM, you can now spend your time actually focused on your business instead of in your business. So that kind of alleviates the pressure there. All the KPIs and the automation, and we kind of, Dennis touched on it in a very minute way. We haven't talked about all the triggers yet of what happens. This becomes essential. And a lot of this that I hear about, and you mentioned Frito-Lay moving from 83 steps down to how many?
21.
21. I can't even imagine the cost savings of that. So if every business took that internally to their to their business, even small businesses. When you look at the inefficiencies and you start tightening it up and do things quicker, easier, more efficient, you're doing more with less, you're saving money. There's all these benefits of KPIs and automation. I am going to, and Dennis, you actually nailed it on AI. Everybody's blowing this thing out of proportion, in my opinion. I've been in technology for a very long time. AI, artificial intelligence, is one thing, automation, reporting on triggers is another. That's not true AI. And it's exactly as you mentioned it. Triggers happen, things happen. It is KPIs in the nth degree with automation, truly. Now, there is some advanced stuff you can do with that, and we're seeing it as AI. But in reality, for most businesses, we are using automation off of triggers based on key performance indicators.
Yep, exactly, exactly. And those triggers, again, you know what they are. I mean, it's either you're trying to increase sales, so you're trying to make sure sales aren't going down, so you're trying to watch for that. You can either the next one is you're trying to manage costs, so you're either trying to keep costs from going up or you're trying to reduce those costs. Those are the only two things you can really control because A minus B gives you what you're trying to get to, which is the profit. So think around then what are all those different things that happen? And there's a book that we've read. It's called Entrepreneurship. Um, and I have to, so I was at a trade show, gosh, it's been 4 years ago. And this person that wrote the book was he was doing like a 45-minute breakout session. And his breakout session was called Accounting Doesn't Have to Suck. And I thought anybody that would write that as his title for his breakout session, I had to go do it because I have an accounting degree. And I think accounting's important, but accounting doesn't really have to suck, but we all kind of think it does. So you go in there, and his whole thing was about, as a business owner, probably the 15 minutes of the month that you dread the most is when the accountant comes in because they're bringing in balance sheets, income statements, all this stuff that it's really foreign language to many business owners, and that you're dependent on that accountant to translate it. He says that accountant needs to change it from balance sheets and income statements to about 5 different pictures. One that has an arrow if sales are going up or down, one that shows what's the differential between cost or your gross profit, and then what's your income to expenses. And from there, then if they're not going in the right direction, that's the trigger to figure out, okay, what are then the sub triggers that you want to watch for and measure against that. If you haven't read the book, highly recommend it. It's a great book to read. A lot of my clients, then we've taken their information and made it into the 5 pictures that he talks about so that they can look at their business from the 5 photos. And that's what they look at the end of the month versus the balance sheet and income statement.
Makes perfect sense.
It does. Because it's like, okay, if sales are going up, doesn't mean you still don't want to focus on it, but it's like, okay, things are probably pretty good and you're going in the right direction, or is the angle of the slope where you want it to be? Maybe it's up, but it's flat. You want it steeper. Okay, then you need to dig in and figure out why isn't it steeper? Or one of the gaps may be that your cash flow is a big one for a small business.
Right.
And so you're watching that cash flow, and then let's say you're a pool company. Well, probably in November, December, January, your cash flow is probably not going to be the best. So either then you need to save some in the good times in March, April, May, June when you're digging pools, or you need to get a line of credit to get you through there because many of them in the past would just lay people off. Well, now I got to hire new people in March. I got to re-onboard them. That's expensive cost, all that kind of thing. That by bridging that gap with a line of credit or setting money aside to cover me through those downtimes, I don't have to lay people off and we're ready to go. And I can actually start digging pools February 28th, not March 28th. And so I can get an extra month of pool digging in and I can make extra money the next year. So different things like that just help you be more successful.
Absolutely. So one thing I want to touch on is a little bit of the automation that gets a little bit more advanced. And I'm going to go way back in our conversation when you mentioned that we met a month ago. You entered me into the system, and the system actually automated it and put it into a category as a lead.
Yep.
There is an advanced part of this. Once that is done, it triggers something else. It can be, all right, now I'm going to contact Dennis a week from now, thanking him for that meeting. It's an automated email or text
Yep.
that can go out. Take it a step further. Now, a month from now, I want to send an advertisement, a promotion, a follow up, a meeting request. That can all be done automated
Correct. So
based on this information and the things that you set up based on key performance indicators.
correct. So, so like, let's say I meet you, Russell, and I think you're a potential lead. I could flag that if if you're using MailChimp, it could go over there. I may have a process. It's 11 steps. So I meet you a week later. It's going to be an email. I don't write that email. MailChimp's already there, and it just knows on day 7 it's going to trigger it. If I don't hear from you by a certain time, it knows to follow up until you respond or I change the status. Then maybe I've got a company that hand writes a thank you note. So that could be triggered that when I have a second follow-up call with you, it takes some of the notes and says, hey, Russell likes University of Tennessee football and, great talking to you and can't wait, go Vols, can't wait for the season to get started. That kind of, and it sends a handwritten note. Looks like I wrote it. I didn't write it. It's all done automated. And then it reminds me to follow up so many days later. And at some point, Russell says, hey, I want to do a demo. We do the demo. Afterwards, there's a follow up. And then when it's time, he says, hey, I want a proposal. We've done the whiteboard. We've got all that. It's just a few things that are in there. And I hit a button and it actually creates the proposal. Let's say I've got a management group that wants to evaluate it before it goes out. It could flow to someone. They could review it, hit it, and go out. And I have a great story on this one. So there was one of our clients that they had lots of people out selling, and they used an Excel spreadsheet to do all their estimating. Well, their margin was supposed to be 35%. Well, someone accidentally changed the spreadsheet to 3.5% and didn't change it back. So for 6 months, all proposals went out at 3.5%. They won a lot. Their sales were going way up, but the margins were like, they were losing money. They were, it's like selling Charmin below cost. I mean, you're selling lots of Charmin, but you don't make any money. So they, and they couldn't figure out why they were, losing money, but they're winning all this business. Well, they sent the spreadsheet to us because they weren't automated yet. And I knew that they had 35% as their flag. And so we're looking at the spreadsheets and stuff. And I'm like, I called the owner and I said, I thought it was 35%, but it's 3.5%. He about fell out of his chair. So what we did when we automated it, it defaulted to 35%. The sales team could change it, but if it changed below 25%, from there, it would automatically route to the owner and he would have to review it and approve it and go on. As long as it was above 25%, they could do anything they want and he didn't have to look at it, but he would see reports of, hey, here's what's going on. Those are just simple ways that, the old way would be, I got to look at every single proposal. Well, that's not productive. That's a waste of your time. You only want to look at the things that are outside whatever the exception or norm that you're expecting it to happen. And so then they're back doing things that they're not selling as much, but they're making a heck of a lot more money now than they were there for those 6 months.
That's an excellent story and an excellent example of if they had this real time, they wouldn't have went so long, basically not making any money.
Correct.
So Dennis, this is a huge topic. We only scratched the surface, to be honest with you. I know that. I think our listeners know that. If you want to hear more of this, please let us know. Send me an email, comment, let me know. We try to keep your time relevant when we do these podcasts. We're 34 minutes into this. So we are going to wrap this up. Dennis is going to have to come back on.
I would love to. I love doing this, so I'm passionate.
And keep talking about the benefits of key performance indicators and automation. There's a lot a business can do to be more efficient, increase sales, watch their margins, um, keep hires, track sales. I could go on and on and on. So,
Right.
Dennis, I'm going to let you give final thoughts on your end. Anything you would like to add, or just
Yeah,
wrap up?
the key thing is keep it simple. Don't get overwhelmed with it. Don't try to eat the whole thing at once. Find one area. Again, and it's change. So, and we didn't talk about change management in here, but I mean, that could be a whole topic unto itself. But just find a win, find something that you as the owner can be excited about and your team can get engaged in as well, and then begin to apply it to other parts of the business. And would be happy to have a conversation with you. If you don't know where to start, happy to have a 30-minute dialogue with you. There's no charge, just to kind of share and give you some ideas, and would love to talk to you about it.
Dennis, thank you. Appreciate that. Everybody listening, thank you so much for your time. As you can gather, this is a very in-depth conversation. We scratched the surface. We will have to dive into this again. The main goal here was to give everybody an idea that there's ways to operate a business to make you more efficient, to make you more profitable. That is the end goal of every business. Unless you're a nonprofit, you don't care about money. That's fine. You still care about money, but it's not all about profit. If you are a profit business, we all care. We watch or need to watch our bottom line. We want to make money. We want to grow. So, Dennis, if somebody does have questions, if they want to reach out to you for more information, how can they do that?
Yeah, a couple different ways. One, email's the best. It's Dennis, DENNISJ at Work Solution. It's WORX solution.com. There's no S at the end. When I started the business 13 years ago, that was $2,500 that I didn't have for that extra S. My email is, or that's my email. Phone is 615-336-7094, or I'm on LinkedIn, either at Work Solutions or Dennis Jackson, and just connect, and would love to chat. Like I said, offer is happy to do a 30-minute conversation with you and give you some ideas. And if there's no charge, just happy to talk to you about it.
Dennis, thank you. Appreciate that. Anybody listening, take advantage of that. That is an awesome promotion that Dennis is offering, to have that conversation and to kind of work through this with you. My name is Russell Carrier. I am the owner of First Choice Business Brokers of East Tennessee and Nashville. You've been listening to the Business Advocate podcast. We appreciate your time. If you haven't done it, please subscribe. If you liked what you heard, please like it. And if you didn't like what you heard, please tell me. These are for you. I don't benefit from this. As you see, there's no promotionals. We come out here and we try to give you information that business owners can benefit from. And the only way we can do that is to hear back from you. If you're listening to the podcast and you want to see what we look like, shame on you. But if you do, you can go to YouTube. We are on YouTube. You can find us under the Business Advocate podcast. So thank you very much. Hope you're all are having a great, productive day. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.